The airport buzzed with the rhythm of departures, yet Claire Matthews felt as though the entire world had collapsed into silence around her. Under her heavy beige coat, layers of satin clung to her skin, the wedding dress she had once chosen with joy now suffocating against her body. Each step echoed betrayal, the sound of shoes meant to walk down an aisle now dragging across terminal floors. Only 12 hours earlier, flowers had filled the church, guests waiting, music rehearsed. She remembered gripping her bouquet tighter, glancing at the door for Daniel's arrival. He never came, no call, no message, no explanation, just absence. The shame burned hotter than the candles that flickered in the sanctuary. "Boarding pass, please," the airline agent said, her tone clipped, unaware that the trembling hand sliding the document across the counter belonged to a bride deserted on her own wedding day. Claire avoided eye contact, praying the woman couldn't see the edge of white lace peeking beneath her coat. As the agent returned the passport, Claire whispered to herself, "Not the end, just another beginning." Her lips quivered, the words tasting like defiance and despair all at once. At the gate, she dropped into a chair by the window, staring at the tarmac. Her reflection in the glass looked foreign, red eyes, makeup streaked, curls undone. The satin neckline peeked out again, reminding her she hadn't even changed before fleeing. She couldn't bear to stay in the city where every street corner carried reminders of him, where pitying eyes would follow her until she suffocated. Her phone vibrated. A message from her maid of honor. "Where are you? Talk to us, please." Claire's thumb hovered, but she set the phone down. No one could understand. Love wasn't supposed to vanish in silence. The boarding announcement cut through her thoughts. Claire rose, clutched her small suitcase, and joined the line. Passengers murmured in languages she couldn't place, laughter bubbling from families and couples around her. She kept her head lowered, a ghost among the living. When she stepped onto the plane, cool air washed over her flushed skin. A flight attendant smiled, but Claire could only nod. Her seat was by the window. She pressed her forehead to the glass as the engines roared to life. Beneath the coat, her hands clutched the satin fabric like an anchor, refusing to let go of what had been meant for another life. As the city lights shrank below, she exhaled a shaky breath. "Dubai," she whispered, almost testing the word. It sounded foreign, distant, untethered from her pain. She told herself she would land as someone else, a woman who could rewrite her story, even if she had to carve it out of heartbreak. But as the darkness of the Atlantic stretched beneath her, a cold weight settled in her chest. Freedom felt fragile. Somewhere beyond the clouds, shadows waited, and Claire could not yet see how close they already were. Dubai shimmered like a mirage as Claire stepped out of the airport. Heat clung to her skin, thicker than the jet lag pressing on her bones. Towering glass buildings pierced the sky, gleaming like jewels against the desert sun. Her taxi driver said little, only pointing at landmarks she could barely register. She kept her eyes on the horizon, whispering to herself that she would start over here, where no one knew her name or her shame. The hotel lobby smelled of polished marble and lilies. Golden chandeliers reflected across the floor, scattering light into fragments. Claire checked in, handed her passport, and smiled faintly as the receptionist welcomed her with scripted warmth. Once in her room, she dropped her coat across the chair, exposing the white dress, still wrinkled beneath. She stared at it for a long time, then shoved it deep into the closet, burying it as if it could no longer haunt her. She had no plan, only the urge to keep moving. That night, hunger drove her downstairs to the hotel restaurant. The place pulsed with quiet jazz and clinking glasses, tourists mingling with businessmen. Claire ordered coffee she didn't need, just to keep herself from returning to the silence upstairs. It was then she noticed him. He sat a few tables away, sharply dressed in a dark blazer, his features marked by both charm and restraint. When their eyes met, he didn't look away quickly like most men would. Instead, he smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of lips that made her stomach tighten. She glanced down, embarrassed, but when she looked back up, he was standing near her table. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the chair across from her. Claire hesitated, then nodded. "I couldn't help but notice you seem far away," he said, his voice carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. "I'm Youssef." "Claire," she answered softly. "American?" She nodded. His questions began lightly. How long she planned to stay, what she thought of the city, whether she had visited before. He listened with a kind of intensity that disarmed her, his gaze steady, his smile gentle. For the first time in days, she felt seen. Over the next hour, Youssef spoke of Dubai with reverence. "It's a city that rewards those who dare," he told her. "Here you can be whoever you want. No past. No chains." His words lodged inside her like a promise. She sipped her coffee, letting herself believe him. When she rose to leave, Youssef stood as well. "Allow me to show you the city tomorrow. It isn't meant to be seen alone." Claire hesitated, her instinct wavering. She had flown across the world to escape being abandoned. Letting a stranger lead her through this new place felt dangerous. Yet something in his confidence wrapped around her loneliness, soothing it. "All right," she said, barely audible. The next morning, Youssef arrived in a sleek car. They drove through avenues lined with palms, past souks alive with color and sound, past gold markets where every surface glittered. He guided her through narrow alleys where the scent of spices clung to the air, translating words, bargaining for her when vendors tried to overcharge. Claire found herself laughing, the sound strange to her own ears. Youssef watched closely, pleased. As the sun dipped low, painting the skyline crimson, he asked, "Do you feel better than yesterday?" She met his eyes. "I almost do." Yet as the car pulled back into the hotel's driveway, a flicker of unease passed through her chest. His charm was magnetic, but his presence felt heavy, inescapable. Still, she pushed the thought aside, convincing herself tomorrow would be lighter. She didn't yet see how quickly tomorrow would belong to him. The hotel room had begun to feel less like a refuge, and more like a cage. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small drawer of the nightstand. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, lay the wedding ring she had never worn. She had hidden it away the first night, as though burying it could erase what Daniel had done. But it pulled at her thoughts, whispering failure each time her hand brushed against the drawer handle. Youssef had become a constant presence. He arrived each morning with plans, markets, hidden cafes, quiet walks by the marina. At first, his company felt like rescue. Now his questions pressed harder. Why had she come alone? What man would let his bride wander another country without him? Claire gave vague answers, but his eyes lingered, searching for the truth beneath her hesitation. One evening, after a day of wandering the desert on camelback, she returned exhausted. Youssef followed her upstairs. He leaned casually against the doorframe as she tried to usher him out, his smile edged with something sharper. "You keep secrets," he said lightly, though his gaze was unblinking. "It's strange. I thought Americans were more open." Claire forced a laugh. "Everyone has things they don't talk about." His eyes drifted toward the nightstand. "Like what's in that drawer?" Her stomach tightened. "Just books. Nothing interesting." Youssef stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I think you ran from something, or someone." The words sliced through her composure. She bit her lip, unwilling to let the tremor in her chest show. "You were imagining things." He studied her face, then chuckled softly, as if dismissing the moment. But when he left, Claire pulled open the drawer and held the ring in her palm. The diamond caught the dim light, mocking her. She considered throwing it away, yet her hand refused to release it. Finally, she pushed it deeper into the drawer, beneath hotel brochures, as though layers of paper could smother its presence. The next morning, Youssef arrived earlier than usual. He seemed more intense, more insistent. Over breakfast, he leaned close. "If I am to protect you, I must know everything. Tell me why you are here." Claire's spoon clattered against the saucer. "I don't need protection. I just want to be free." "Free from what?" His voice was soft, but it carried weight. Her throat tightened. "From being left behind." Youssef's expression shifted, almost triumphant, as if her confession confirmed what he already suspected. He reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. "Then let me promise you this. You will never be left alone again." The words sounded like comfort, yet they wrapped around her like a chain. Later that day, a maid entered her room while Claire lingered in the lobby. She noticed the edge of white satin peeking from the closet, the faint outline of something glittering in the drawer. Curiosity tugged at her, and when she spotted the ring, she gasped softly. By the time Claire returned upstairs, the drawer looked untouched, but the maid's eyes carried a silent warning. As Claire closed the door behind her, she pressed her forehead to the cool wood, heart pounding. Trust felt dangerous, yet isolation felt unbearable. Youssef's voice echoed in her memory, binding her tighter with every promise. You will never be left alone again. She didn't see how quickly those words would prove true, nor how costly they would become. The first days passed in a blur of glittering cityscapes and Youssef's carefully curated plans. Claire sent photos home at first, selfies in front of the Burj Khalifa, snapshots of souks bursting with spices, her smile stretched thin but convincing. Friends commented on her courage. Her sister replied with heart emojis, and her mother wrote long messages urging her to come back, to start over. Claire ignored them, pretending the distance made her stronger. Then, without warning, the messages stopped. Back in New York, her best friend Erin noticed first. 3 days had passed since Claire's last reply. At first, Erin assumed jet lag or sightseeing had distracted her. By the end of the week, unease had twisted into dread. She scrolled through their old texts, rereading Claire's final note. He says I can't go anywhere without him, but maybe that's what I need to not be alone. Erin's stomach knotted. Claire had never spoken like that before. Meanwhile, in Dubai, the hotel staff grew uneasy. Housekeeping reported her room increasingly disheveled. Half-packed clothes, an untouched tray of food, left for days, the white dress crumpled like a ghost in the corner. The ring she once hid was gone. Her passport too. Yet the bed looked unslept in for 2 nights. When the manager inquired, Youssef appeared at the front desk with casual calm. She left, he explained, shrugging. Claire wanted to travel outside the city, to clear her head. She is independent, yes? American women like that. His smile was smooth, but his words left staff uneasy. Security reviewed the cameras. Claire was last seen entering a car with Youssef late one evening. After that, silence. Erin, desperate for answers, called the hotel directly. The receptionist hesitated, then admitted Claire hadn't been seen for days. Panic shot through Erin's chest. Please, she begged, you have to check again. She wouldn't just vanish. That night, Claire's mother received the call she had feared since her daughter boarded the plane. Your daughter is missing. Across Dubai, posters with Claire's photograph began to appear. Her smile, bright, unsuspecting, stared from lampposts and bulletin boards, from cafe counters and metro walls. Missing stamped in bold red letters beneath her name. Tourists glanced, shook their heads, and walked past. But for her family, each poster was a knife twisting deeper. At the police station, investigators questioned Youssef. He leaned back in the chair, hands folded, his answers rehearsed. Claire was restless. She told me she wanted to disappear, to leave everything behind. She is not the first foreigner to feel trapped here. Perhaps she found another path. The detective pressed him harder. Why did she stop calling her family? Youssef smiled faintly. Maybe she wanted peace. Not everyone announces their choices, but his composure faltered when confronted with the hotel footage. Claire never appeared, leaving the building alone. Only with him. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Do not waste time. She is not a child. Americans always believing something bad must have happened. Sometimes people choose freedom. Outside, the city continued to dazzle with its towers and malls, its wealth and noise. Yet in one corner of the desert metropolis, silence stretched for 20 days. No phone calls, no messages, no trace of the woman who had once sworn she would rewrite her story. For those who loved her, the silence was unbearable. For those searching, it was a clue screaming louder than words. Claire had not vanished by choice. The posters multiplied like ghosts, haunting the city. Claire's face stared out from cafe windows, metro stations, and telephone poles, her smile frozen in a moment she never knew would become a plea. Beneath it, bold letters screamed missing. Tourists glanced briefly, but locals whispered, uneasy with the foreign woman who had vanished so suddenly. Her family arrived in Dubai, exhausted from flights and hollowed out by fear. Her mother clutched one of the posters to her chest, as though holding it might summon her daughter back. Erin walked beside her, fury burning beneath grief. Together they marched into the police station demanding answers, only to be met with clipped reassurances and a labyrinth of paperwork. An investigator, Detective Rappanen, sat across from them, voice steady but eyes shadowed. "We are doing all we can. But cases like these, they are complicated." "Complicated?" Erin snapped. She didn't vanish into thin air. She was with him. That man, Youssef. Rahman's jaw tightened. He knew the name well. A string of whispers trailed behind Youssef. Relationships with women who arrived bright-eyed and left in silence. Some returned home bruised and broken. Others were never heard from again. But evidence had always slipped through his fingers like sand. Meanwhile, Youssef maintained his charm. He spoke with reporters, hands open, face solemn. "I cared for Claire. She was lost, but strong. She told me she wanted to leave everything behind. Maybe she finally did." His voice cracked at the edges, as if rehearsed grief might mask the calculation behind his eyes. Still, cracks appeared. A hotel maid stepped forward quietly, her voice trembling. "I heard them argue. She said she wanted to go home. He told her she belonged to him now." Her testimony was noted, but without proof. It was only words against his. Outside the station, volunteers taped more posters to walls, their tape rolls snapping through the night. Erin joined them, her hands shaking as she pressed Claire's face against cold concrete. "Someone has to see her," she whispered. "Someone has to know." In the desert outskirts, a police search team combed through endless dunes. Tracks led nowhere, only to vanish under shifting sands. The horizon stretched empty, mocking their efforts. A scarf was found, pale blue, caught in a thorn bush. It matched the one Claire had been wearing in her last photographs. Her mother wept when it was brought back, clutching the fabric as if it were her daughter's hand. Yet the official report stalled, slowed by bureaucracy and whispers of influence. Some claimed Youssef's connections ran deep. Others said cases like Claire's often faded, buried under wealth and silence. As the 20th night fell, Erin walked the streets, staring at the posters plastered across every corner. The ink was beginning to fade in the heat, the edges curling, but Claire's face still looked out pleading, accusing. And though the city tried to look away, the woman in the posters refused to be forgotten. The desert did not give up secrets easily. Sand swallowed everything, footprints, tire marks, even time itself. Yet detectives refused to abandon the search. Each dawn, teams spread out in widening circles beyond the city, scanning endless dunes that shimmered like fire under the sun. What they sought was not a body at first, but fragments, a shoe, a phone, any trace of Claire Matthews. Detective Rahman studied a map pinned across the hood of a police vehicle. "She was last seen near here," he muttered, pointing at an expanse of road leading nowhere but dust. A car registered to Youssef was caught by traffic cameras heading out at midnight. He returned 3 hours later, alone. The others exchanged glances. It was a pattern too familiar. The vanished woman, the unshakable alibi, the lack of proof. Still, Rahman pushed forward. 2 miles beyond the checkpoint, officers found an abandoned sedan. Sand had crept through its windows, coating the seats like ash. The trunk smelled faintly metallic, a copper tang that raised every hair on Rahman's arms. Inside lay faint smears, tested quickly, blood, though not enough to prove death. Nearby, half buried in shifting dunes, they found it. Claire's scarf, pale blue, torn, the edges frayed as though from a struggle. The sand clung to faint impressions, a handprint pressed deep, a drag mark trailing off into nothing. Back at headquarters, Rahman confronted Youssef with the evidence. "She wore that scarf in her last photo," Rahman said, dropping it on the table between them. "It was found in the desert, near your car." Youssef leaned back, his composure only slightly cracked. "So she rode with me. We drove. She wanted to see the desert at night. It was romantic. But she asked me to stop. She said she needed air. When I returned, she was gone. You expect us to believe she wandered alone into the desert?" Youssef's lips curved faintly. "She wanted to disappear. You cannot understand. She was broken. Perhaps she saw the desert as freedom. Raman slammed a hand against the table. Freedom doesn't leave blood in a car. For a moment, Youssef's mask faltered, but then he leaned forward, eyes cold. Be careful, detective. In this city, some truths are more dangerous than lies. The weight of his words lingered long after he left the interrogation room. Meanwhile, Claire's family clung to hope. Erin paced their hotel suite, gripping her phone as news stations replayed clips of investigators combing dunes. They found her scarf, she whispered to Claire's mother. That means she fought. That means she didn't just leave. Her mother clutched a rosary in trembling hands. Or it means she's gone. The trial of evidence began to collapse under pressure. Without a body, charges against Youssef stalled. Lawyers circled like vultures, arguing that a scarf and a car proved nothing. Some whispered that Youssef's connections shielded him, that powerful friends buried uncomfortable truths in the sand. Still, Rahman refused to close the file. He returned to the desert again and again, walking until his boots filled with heat, staring at dunes that seemed to shift just to taunt him. He imagined Claire out there fighting, crying, silenced. The city's glittering skyline loomed in the distance, a cruel reminder of wealth and power, of the two worlds colliding, one that celebrated life and one that buried it. Though the case slowed, whispers grew louder. People spoke of other women, other sudden disappearances, all tied to the same smile, the same man. And with every passing day, it became clear. The desert was hiding more than Claire. It was hiding a pattern. Claire's body was never found, and the case closed with insufficient evidence. Youssef walked free, but her face haunted him everywhere, on fading posters, in whispers that followed him through the city. In New York, vigils turned those same posters into memorials, her wedding dress displayed beneath candlelight as a symbol of loss. Erin spoke her name until her voice broke, vowing the world would not forget. Detective Rahman kept the file open in his mind, unable to let go. Claire had vanished, but her absence became louder than truth itself, an echo that would never die.